Welcome to the Sports Motivation Podcast. This is Niyi Sobo, former NFL running back, now mindset coach, teaching you to be supremely confident, fearless, infinitely prepared, and consistently dominating under pressure. So listen up, take notes. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Sports Motivation Podcast. It's your host, Niyi Sobo. It's another episode, man. Listen, man, everyone's been through pain. Everyone's been through trauma. And unfortunately, a lot of people go through their lives never having really, number one, even diagnosed or understood, what their pain or trauma really is. Some people have been through really, really tough shit and have suppressed it, not paid attention to it. Some people have been through things, maybe not as extreme, if you will, but these things never been talked about. They've never been dealt with. And then, of course, they show up in the form of insecurities, anxieties, depression much later on in life. And then, of course, this prevents us from getting what we want. So, there's mental health in the sports world is a lot of people paying a lot of attention to it now. Obviously, it's nothing new, but a lot of depression, a lot of pain. Same thing in really all, realms of performance, if you will. Suicide rates really high among entrepreneurs. Drug use really high amongst athletes, of course. And so anyway, you get the idea, right? So I can guarantee you've been through something in your life. Maybe it wasn't, being sexually abused or physically abused when you were younger. Maybe it was something as, you had to move a lot when you were young. Your parents got divorced. Maybe your best friend died when you were in middle school. Maybe your girlfriend cheated on you when you're in high school. And it's easy to look at those things and say, oh, man, that's not a big deal. They happen to everyone. Well, everyone experiences trauma. So we're all humans and we all have the capacity to feel, and we all have our heart broken. We all have painful memories and things that, we wish would have gone a certain way, but they didn't. And that affects us all in certain ways. And what I've noticed is that and there's a lot of reasons for it. I mean, I talk about religion a lot. I'm not going to blame everything on religion, and everyone's religion is different. But we're almost taught that we, as humans, whenever something happens to us, or there's some way that we feel that it's wrong or that it's a bad thing, and we're taught to view our pain, quote unquote, or our trauma in that way as well, almost as if something's wrong with us. And we spend our whole lives trying to get better, trying to rehabilitate, trying to overcome some quote unquote weakness. When in reality, there's a way that we can use that pain, that trauma, to not just reframe it, but to actually use that to make us perform at an insanely high level. Do you understand what I'm saying? So you see all these people on my wall here. You got a few. You look at Tupac, Malcolm X, Kobe Bryant. These are people who, just like us, have been through pain, trauma, traumatic experiences. But what they've done, what they found a way to do, is channel their quote unquote dark side, that pain, that trauma, and have that fuel something much bigger. And I know a lot of people struggle with motivation, and even deeper, people struggle with even feeling worthy or feeling like they have a purpose in life. But maybe you're someone who, you have a purpose and you've crafted some vision statement or something like that, but you still can't find a way to generate the levels of energy that are surely prerequisites for big time results. So if you want to become the best in the world at something, there's no question about it. You need to put in lots of work. Is that fair to say? You need to overcome lots of obstacles, bigger obstacles than what someone who is just going after some regular shit would have to overcome, right? So if that's what you want, then that means you have to generate a certain amount of energy to overcome that. You have to spend more time doing things than other people, to where other people should look at you and say, wow, how do you do that? How do you expend that much energy on such little sleep? How do you spend day after day doing that? If people aren't looking at you saying that, I can guarantee you're not going to do anything very significant in the way that I know you crave to, right? And I say you because I know who you are, because you and I are similar. So if you want to do that, you have to find a way to use your pain to help you to achieve at a high level. And what I want to do in this episode is show you how to do that. And of course, I want to show you how I do that, and maybe, give you some insight into my story, because it's not like I don't want you to think it's some ABC sort of formulaic. I'm going to give you some philosophical principles behind it, and I'm going to show you how you can mentally apply this in a way that will start to give you lots and lots of energy. And my goal is for you to have a breakthrough mentally today based on what you hear, because you are capable of so much more. You're capable of expending so much more energy. You have so much dormant energy laying within you that you haven't accessed. And it's actually quite a shame if you think about it, because what you've been doing, and it's not really any fault of yours, it's how we've been taught, is you've been viewing your pain as there's something wrong with you. You've been trying to heal. You spend your whole lives trying to heal, and nothing's happening. As a matter of fact, you find yourself, having less and less energy, which is not the way to go. All right. So I want to sort of reframe this whole idea of pain in a way that will make a lot of sense to you. So the first thing that I want you to do is just stop referring to whatever you went through as, something bad. Now, I know that's much easier said than done. All right. And there's a lot of things that you've gone through that surely you wouldn't have happen again. And there's a lot of things that you've gone through that have real life implications on where you're at right now. And so what I mean by, not looking at it as something bad is do your best to look at what happened to you in perspective. And what I mean by that is when you look at things in perspective, you kind of get outside of yourself and you look at the big picture, right? So let's say, for example, when you get hurt or something. The other day, I was driving and we're on the way back home, and it was nighttime, and we're just driving down the road, and then I had to literally screech the brakes because there was a deer right in the middle of the road, and the deer was literally sitting there just looking at us. And when I say sitting there, like literally sitting there. Now, obviously, what do deers normally do when you see them? They run, right? So you might see him in the middle of I know the whole deer in the headlights thing, but this wasn't that. This deer was clearly hurt, and it was in the middle of the road. Now, I don't know what happened to that deer, but I can guarantee that deer's probably not living right now. And so when I see little things like that, as weird as it sounds, it reminds me that, shit, anything could happen to anyone. Now, it feels like a sort of a cold way to look at it, but it really is true. Anything that you've been through, there's someone who's been through 10 times worse than that. And again, you don't want to tell yourself this in order to, lack or to reduce the amount of empathy or compassion that you have for yourself. But really, it's about not feeling the sympathy or feeling sorry for yourself. Because when you feel sorry for someone, you're sorry that it's happened to someone. But the reality is that anything could happen to anyone. And it's not necessarily your job anymore to heal. It's just to accept the pain that you've been through and use it and channel it. All right. So what do I mean by that? Let me sort of give you my story, if you will. And maybe you'll be able to better understand why I talk the shit that I talk, why I say the things that I say, why I do what I do for a living. Because sometimes I think about what I do for a living and it's kind of weird, right? Like, coach people on mindset and shit, and teach them how to do these things in a certain way. And there's a lot of times where it's almost like a pinch yourself type of moment where I'm like, is this really what I'm doing? It's just crazy, because at any point of my life, I would never there was a point in my life where I started to gain more clarity on exactly what I wanted to do, right? But if you go back 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, what I'm doing now would not be what I had imagined, right? Not in the slightest bit. And so I grew up third out of four boys. And my pops came from Nigeria, married my mom. My mom was much younger than my dad was. And my dad was very much into academics, right? Like he was very into academics. And that was a standard for us. And I was quote unquote, shy or introverted since young. But it started to get a little bit more exaggerated when I got a little older, or I should say like elementary, middle school. And one of the reasons why is because I was doing not that well in school. I wasn't doing horrible when you look at it in perspective, but comparatively to my brothers who were all super outgoing, really, really great students, they were really, really not into school, but they did really well in school, and I didn't. And I got a lot of chastising from my dad and all those type of things, and that really did a number on my confidence, if you will. And there was a situation in high school where my dad really laid it on pretty thick this day and said some really hurtful things. And I remember I got out the car and I went and cried in the computer room. I usually got there pretty early, so I went in there and cried. And I wasn't a kid who cried a lot, not on purpose, but it just wasn't very much rewarded, let's say, in the culture of my household. I grew up with four boys in the house, no girls. Dad, extremely, I don't know, tough is the word, but basically we never saw him cry or show any sort of compassion in that type of way. And so after that, high school was really a struggle for me. I went to this private high school and wasn't a lot of people who looked like me, let's just say, and didn't do that well in school. Really struggled. Really was like a C student, but he made it sound like I was failing out of school. But anyway, my point in saying that is that, high school was a really rough time for me. And during that time, I really started to withdraw a lot. And that was when my heart, if you will, began to freeze up, if you will. I became very independent. I became very self-reliant. And I learned that there was really not a way for me to make my dad happy, because I was really, really trying very hard to make my dad happy. And I was trying to get good grades. I was trying to do what he wanted. And it just felt so difficult, almost to the point that it was impossible. And so the way that I responded to that is I just said, fuck it. And I just started doing my own thing. Now, my own thing at that time meant focusing on football. All my brothers played soccer. All my brothers, were really into school. I just wanted to play football. And so much so that I would drive the bus. They didn't have a football team at my school, so I would drive the bus like an hour and a half away just to go to practice. And I loved football, and I went all into football. And I took out a lot of my frustration and my energy in football, and it obviously very, very much helped because I loved it. And I was pretty good at it. I wasn't like, a super ultra talented kid, but I was good enough, right? I had a good enough foundation. And so all during that time, I never opened up about anything, or, no one was really paying attention to me emotionally, let's say. And I was pretty much on my own. And I learned to take care of myself. I learned to go after my goals, to focus on what it is that I wanted to accomplish and go after it in a way that was different than other people. I remember being in college and my friends would always be like, yo, man, how do you get up how do you motivate yourself to get up so early, even though we just went out to the club and was out till 3-4 o'clock in the morning? How do you motivate yourself to eat healthy and do all these things? And I always seemed so driven and motivated to everyone else, when to me it was normal, right? It was normal for me to do that. And that got me all the way to the NFL. And that focus and that drive got me to the NFL. Now, mind you, that whole time, again, I wasn't in touch with this pain or in touch with this trauma, if you will, that I went through as it relates to my relationship with my dad. I wasn't in touch with that. I wasn't aware of it. But it did allow me a certain amount of motivation and drive to really go after the things that I wanted, right? Long story short, I got released from the NFL when I was about 20, I think it was about 20 something, obviously like 23, 24. Spent a couple years trying to get back into the league. Didn't really happen. And it was really, really frustrating. By this time I had children. I had my wife, and I was frustrated. I was very much lost, very much didn't know what I wanted to do next, very much unsure about my place in life. And I remember very vividly, it was 4th of July weekend, and all of my brothers, along with my dad, were at my house. And I can't remember how the conversation got started. And we were talking to my dad, and it was a pretty deep conversation. It was about, childhood, and someone brought it up, right? And at this point in time, I was sort of becoming more aware of, how I felt, but still almost a lot of it still really unknown to me, very foreign. And my brother started talking about me and started telling my dad about how he felt about the fact that, how he treated me growing up and how that made him feel and all this other things. And my brother looked at me and said, yeah, Niyi, tell him. Like basically, yeah, tell him all the stuff you've told us. And I wasn't really ready to do it. But I remember, opening up, looking at my dad and starting to open up and tell him how I felt. And pretty soon, I started getting really emotional. And that emotion turned into tears. I started crying, which is not common for me and not common really for any of the men in my family. And I started crying, and what I was saying, what I kept saying to my dad was, I just wanted to be your son. I just wanted to be your son. I wanted you to call me your son. And it's crazy because to this day, I have 3 sons. And one of the things I always say to my sons, like damn near daily, I always tell them, I say, you my son. I just tell them that. It seems obvious, right? But I tell them, you my son. Or I say when my son's playing football, that's my son. That's my son. Because that's how I wanted to feel as a kid. I wanted to feel like my dad loved me, like he valued me, like he cherished me. But I didn't feel that way. I did not feel that way growing up. And it hurt me. It hurts me to this day. Do you understand that? It hurts me to this day to think about. Not as much anymore, but sometimes it does hurt as much as it can hurt. And that's the thing about pain. And that's the thing that gets me frustrated, because a lot of us have this idea that at some point we're just not going to feel any pain anymore. It's like, that's not really how it works with emotional pain, at least how I've experienced it. And of course, I'll give you an update, so if you see me 5 years from now and I say, you know what, I never really feel any pain about my childhood, I'll let you know. But that's not the place I am in life right now. But let me tell you what happened as a result of that encounter and why I'm telling you this whole story, because the pain doesn't have to mean the same thing. So after that, poured my heart out to my dad. What was crazy is that he didn't even say anything to me. He didn't really apologize, honestly. Didn't even really comfort me. So you would actually look at it and say, man, that was a pretty epic failure, right? Like I sat here and poured my heart out to my dad and realized myself that I had up until that time literally been doing everything to make my dad happy, including playing football. Even though that was something I went and tried to quote unquote do on my own, right? I still unconsciously was driven by the desire to make my dad happy. And I made some pretty bad mistakes on the way to trying to do that. I invested, I would say, in a relationship that was not a good idea to invest in, based off the desire to please my father as a grown-ass man. And by the way, I was 28 at this time when this conversation happened. But even though I didn't get the response from my dad that I hoped to, the next day, I felt so good. Number one, it felt so refreshing to know the real motivations behind why I was trying to do what I was trying to do. And it made sense that I was at this point now frustrated because it seemed as if I couldn't accomplish the goal of making my dad happy. I had no more to try to do. It's like, what, I'm going to go back to school and try to get straight A's? I'm already done with football. And actually, I felt like a failure for that because I felt like I didn't really maximize it or get the most out of it. And of course, I was wondering if he thought I was a failure. I was wondering what he was going to think of me now. So after this, I felt great. I felt good. I felt like I understood, and I felt like I no longer had to do that anymore. I no longer had to live my life pursuing my dad's approval. And it was almost like I was reborn after that moment. And that was really when I started going hard into improving myself, crafting my vision, and starting to give value in the ways that I knew I could give value, and started aligning myself with things that felt right to me instead of just chasing after jobs or, creating random businesses, which I see a lot of people do. They create random businesses that have no emotion behind them, no real purpose behind them, just trying to chase money. Or in my experience, doing things for those reasons, you get burned out very quickly. And you typically give up really quickly. What you want to do is find something that you can pour your heart and soul into and have the patience to see through to completion, if there is even such thing as completion. And so let's fast forward where I'm at now, what I do for a living. And I'm going to start to show you how this pain has been driven in. What I do now, at the essence of what I do now, is teach people how to take control. That's really what it's about, right? Through all this mindset and confidence and systems and habits, all of it is designed to help you take control. And do you know why? Because I can't stand the feeling of helplessness. I can't stand to feel the feelings that I felt when I was in 6th grade, knowing that I could not make my dad happy, but trying so hard, but feeling so helpless. I do not like that feeling. I do not like the feeling of knowing that I tried so very hard to get someone's approval only for them to shit on me. I do not like having to rely on people and having them fail me and having them not be there for me like so many people were when I was young. So guess what I had to do? I had to build self-reliance. I had to take control. And that control, that need for control, is still with me to this day. It's not changing. My past is not changing. What I went through is not changed. I still went through that. And I was shaped when I was younger in that way. And that self-reliance, that need for control, I channeled that in many ways in a positive direction. Some ways I didn't. But the ways that I did got me at the highest level as a professional, got me to outwork my competition at every single stage. Was I looking to make my dad happy? Absolutely. Absolutely. Is that a bad thing? Not necessarily. Because that's a part of my journey. Now I'm at the place where I can accept that. Now I'm at the place where I don't have to have that be my main motivation. So guess what my motivation is now? To teach people, and not just any people, my children, the love I have for my children. I do not want them to go through what I went through. I want them to have a sense of control over their lives. I don't want them to be chasing after other people's opinions and approval. I don't want them to feel the helplessness that I felt. And my whole business is centered around that. Everything that I do is about giving you that feeling of control and teaching you how to develop that self-reliance so that you can be a true lion in the jungle. Because that's what I was since about 4th grade, taking care of myself, looking after myself because no one else was. That's why I talk this reality shit. That's why I tell it to you so harsh, because I had to see it in that way. Otherwise, I wouldn't survive. Now, there's some people who went through way worse shit than me. But they're not using their pain. They're covering their pain and they're trying to heal, quote unquote. I'm suggesting you use your pain and use it to fuel something bigger than yourself. Because you can. Me talking this shit to you right now, comes from my pain. All of the content and ideas that come, many of them are born out of anger. Just ask anyone in my home, ask my wife, ask my mother, ask my brothers, ask my team. They'll tell you I get mad. I get mad about shit. I get angry. As a matter of fact, most of the times when I get angry, that's when good shit happens. Malcolm X's father was killed by the Ku Klux Klan. They tied him to a railroad and had the train run over him. Malcolm X's family was broken apart by racist whites. They put his mom in an insane asylum. His mother went crazy. Shipped him off to a foster home. Malcolm X was angry, very angry. And that's what allowed him to talk his shit in the way that he articulated himself was pain behind that, anger behind that. That was what was fueling his vision. Kobe Bryant, as a youngster, moved from Italy to here to back to Philadelphia. And guess what? He was made fun of. He didn't have any friends. So guess what? He found comfort in basketball. And when motherfuckers would make fun of him, guess what he would do? He would do what he does on the basketball court. Give it to fools through anger. That's how Black Mamba was born. How was he able to perform at his best when he was in the midst of going through a trial where he could have ended up in prison for many years? Pain, frustration, anger. He used it to fuel himself. Now, I know this sounds very vague, right? It's like, well, how do I do that? How do I come in touch with my pain? What I'm going to share with you is some steps that you can go through. And I want you to sort of walk yourself through these steps mentally right now and see if you can see yourself going through these and finding that pain and finding really the passion or the purpose behind it so that you can begin to channel that in the right direction. All right. So the first thing that you have to do, obviously, is identify what the pain is. So what was the pain? What did you go through? That's going to require you to reflect on your life. This is why you need a counselor, a therapist, friends. I have a process that I go through in my Killer Instinct system called the Scouting Report, where you spend weeks unearthing a lot of the pain in your life. And it is painful because you buried a lot of it. But you have to identify it so you can understand, why was it painful? Why was it painful? What was it? And with that, you can then accept that pain and understand what it really was. So what abuse did you go through? What experiences did you go through? Even something as simple as, just think of somebody who grew up an only child. Were you ever resentful because you didn't have any brothers or sisters? That's painful, right? So the trick here is don't downplay any of your pain. Don't look at, what 50 Cent went through or Malcolm X went through or, and say, oh, man, I didn't go through anything that traumatic. It's not about trauma is relative, number one, and anyone goes through trauma just depending on where they're at. It's not right or wrong. It's just like pain. I can't tell you that what you're feeling is like less or worse than the pain that I'm feeling. It's personal. It's personal. So you have to identify what that pain is. And again, some of you are less aware than others. And that's okay. You just have to start somewhere, though. So identify what that pain is. Identify the times in your childhood where you experienced trauma, friends leaving you, breakups, parents divorcing. That affected you, right? Getting picked on in school, getting picked on, in your teams. Maybe you were abused. Maybe you went through some more harsh type of shit. Identify what that is. You can't possibly use it if you don't identify it or unearth it. The next thing that you want to do, when you start to unearth your pain, you're going to become aware of your insecurities as a result of that pain. So you're going to realize I'm actually really afraid of failure. I'm really afraid of rejection. That's something that I found out, as I started becoming more aware. I realized how much afraid of rejection I was, really as a result of feeling rejected a lot growing up, feeling rejected by my family, rejected by my brothers even, rejected by my mom for attention that I felt like I didn't get. Felt rejected. And, honestly, fear of rejection doesn't really lend well to anything, honestly, but especially not sports and especially not business, because you're going to experience lots of rejection. And so these insecurities show up for me in many ways. And so what you have to do, and what I found a way to do, is turn these insecurities into anger. All right. Now, there's a lot of people who will have you, and I see this again happen a lot in religion. I see it happen a lot even in the self-help community as well, is people wear their insecurities like a badge of honor. Like, oh, I'm insecure, as if that's like a good thing. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. The reality is we all have insecurities. But if you're using your insecurities to make you feel important, and you're not using it in a productive way to add value to the world, that's a bunch of bullshit. And this is not conducive to turning your pain into power, if you will. So what I found is that turning your insecurities into anger works a lot better. Let me give you an example. So remember I told you about this feeling that I have, fear of rejection, that type of thing. Instead of me, giving in to that fear all the time, what I actually do, and you actually hear this happen a lot on the Get Your Mind Right podcast, you hear a lot of my anger come through there, is that only makes me more focused, more unwilling to tolerate that fear of rejection, and it makes me go even harder. And it makes me teach people practically how to take control of their lives in such a way that that fear of rejection doesn't matter. It's the reason why I teach in systems. It's the reason why I teach you to blast through your fears with practical plans. It's really the whole essence behind what I teach. The entire killer instinct system is really about incorporating all your pain into your purpose and executing regardless of how you feel. And that's something that I've learned how to do. I've learned how to be insecure, but still move forward. I've learned how to feel the fear of rejection, but keep moving forward, and to turn that into an inhuman level of persistence and discipline. You see what I'm saying? So, and this makes me angry. It makes me angry. Now, not necessarily angry at myself or beating myself up, but it makes me angry at the concept of people being held back based on the insecurities that they have. It makes me angry. I get upset. Being upset's not a bad thing. You should try it sometime. You should try being upset at all of the circumstances that have served to hold you back. You should try being upset at that fact. You should try being upset at the fact that there are people who would like you to stay behind. You should try being upset at that. And then next, find a target for your anger. So instead of just being angry, find a target for it. Now, I'll give you an example of what I mean. My target really is at the idea of people like me, highly ambitious, highly competitive people being held back based on fear. That's a target. And it's something that can be systematically attacked. I can show people how to eliminate that fear. I can systematically do that. So what doesn't happen is when you start choosing like a person from your past to be angry at, that doesn't really do a lot. And you can't really systematically attack that person. Otherwise, unless you want to go to jail or something, or you would have whipped their ass. But a lot of times that's not even an option anymore. Sometimes the person who hurt you is not even alive. So what are you going to do? Target it towards some quality, some concept, some idea, some weakness that you can systematically attack. I can show people how to become fearless. I can show people how to become, create a sense of control. I can despise the fact that there are religions and institutions and schools out there that systematically teach you to be weak. So I can create my own institution. I can create my own religion. I can create my own philosophy, which is exactly what I've done. And I can target it towards that concept. And I can do so with a lot of fuel, with a lot of passion, with a lot of anger. Anger is not a bad thing. What happened when we were young, though, when we got angry? We were punished. But you can be angry at that. You can rebel against that. You can be pissed off by that. But you have to channel it strategically. But don't be afraid of being reckless. You hear me talk some reckless shit sometimes. By expressing it through a vehicle, right? And with a focus on adding value, you'll get more articulate as you go on. You get more pointed as you go on. You'll get more efficient as you go on. But you got to use that pain. And once you find your target for your anger, I want you to find a vehicle by which you can express this anger into action. Find a vehicle. All right. Let's say, I'll just give you an example. Let's say there's a lady who grew up, in a home, and she remembers having dinners, with her mom and dad and brothers and sisters, and how just the feeling she felt when she was young. And by the way, I'm literally making this up. Let's say that, and when she was 5, her parents got divorced. And once her mom and dad got divorced, they seemed to no longer have those sit-down dinners. It seemed like everyone was eating on their own. And she really missed that feeling of feeling together. And she also loved food. And when her parents split up, when her parents were together, let's say she used to make food a lot, with her mom and dad, and they used to be in the kitchen a lot. But once they broke up, that no longer happened. And this, of course, was a traumatic experience for her. And this pain carried with her throughout her life. And you might say, oh, that's not a big deal. My parents were divorced too. It doesn't fucking matter. It's her pain. It's her pain. And she's always had a passion for cooking. She's always had a passion for bringing people together through food. So why in God's name is this woman now working as an accountant and struggling to find purpose in her life, struggling to feel motivated? What she needs to do is create a restaurant, or at least work in a restaurant where she can then be a vehicle or help bring people together through food. So now when she serves people and she sees these people having fun and eating around a table, eating great food, she can feel that feeling. And she can feel pissed off that there's people who don't have this. And she can take that anger and channel it into positive energy and find new and innovative ways to bring people together and serve them great food. She can teach cooking classes to young people. She could become a counselor, helping people stay together through marriage counseling because of the effect that divorce has had on her life. There's so many ways, so many vehicles. So yes, starting a business would be the wisest thing in my personal opinion, but that doesn't mean you have to start a business. Work in a business, work in an organization, partner with an organization, work with people who can help you attack this big problem. Express this anger, this passion through your work. And don't be afraid of anger. Be angry that your parents split up and that you didn't get the childhood that you wanted. And now take that anger and help others do what you couldn't do. Take that anger. I don't like seeing people helpless. I don't like seeing young people helpless. I don't like seeing people become victims to their situations. I can't stand the feeling of being a victim. That's why I teach you how to not be that. And I do that through a business, a vehicle. And that is what I'm Not You is about. That's what it's about. It's not about sports. It's not about none of that. That's just a vehicle. Sports is just a vehicle. Kobe Bryant used sports to channel his pain. Malcolm X used his pain to drive that change. Your favorite artist, your favorite R&B singer, they use music as a vehicle by which to express that pain. And you can do that as well. And lastly, you don't want to forget this, is reinforce. You got to remember to reinforce the anger often and as necessary. Don't lose touch with it. Bring it close to you. Talk about it often. Ignore the nonsense talk about something's wrong with you and you need to heal and you need to. No. Your pain is beautiful. Your trauma is beautiful. Use it. Understand it, integrate it, weave it into everything it is that you do. And you will never have a dull moment in your life. I promise you. And you will attract lots of positive people who are going to help you drive your mission forward. You will. But not if you blanket it, not if you cover it, not if you mute it. Your pain is a gift. It's not a disability. It's your story and the world needs it. Because the thing is, everyone's got pain. There's no one who's not been through any sort of trauma. Everyone's been through it. And you can use that. All right? So, I want you to be thinking. This is what I would be thinking right now if I were you. What is the pain that I've been through? Who can I talk to help me uncover it more? How did that pain or how did those traumatic experiences affect me? How did they mold me? How did they shape how I looked at the world? In what ways did I have to compensate for those insecurities? Did the ways that I compensated, did they help me or did they hurt me? Maybe some of them helped you, maybe some of them hurt. Okay? What did I learn as a result of my pain very early? What am I doing now? What are you doing now? Am I happy doing it? Am I motivated doing it? Am I motivated every day? I didn't say do you feel good every day. I said, are you motivated on a ground level every day? If not, in what ways can I express my pain? What vehicles can I use to express my pain through? What changes am I going to have to make? In what ways I'm going to have to be honest with myself about the pain that I actually feel? What am I angry towards? What makes me pissed off? What problems would I love to help solve? What things could I stay up all night thinking about? What conversations could I have and not even think about what I'm going to say because it just flows? If you can find a way to align yourself in that way, like I said, you won't have many dull moments. You'll feel awesome a lot of days. You'll also feel pain a lot of days. But don't be afraid of anger. Don't be afraid of anger. Your pain is your gift.